This particular video is on free will, or shall I say spiritual free will. This is a subject matter that everyone I've ever heard gets it wrong. Now, I know I've spoken on this topic in other videos, but I don't think it was one of my main focuses on my videos. It was always something in the background. And this particular video, 100% speaking on the concept of free will. Scientists discuss it. They get it wrong because they think it's a physical thing. And free will doesn't exist because everything is based upon chance, it's based upon science, it's based upon chemical reactions. Everything is predetermined, scientifically speaking, so you can't discuss this concept with scientists. And then you have the gurus, but most of them default eventually to the concept of non-duality, which is speaking in terms of what common, maybe it's derogatory statement where you've heard the term low-hanging fruit, which is an easy concept to understand because the whole point of low-hanging fruit is a very basic, easy understanding. So the non-duality concept is, in my estimation, the low-hanging fruit. It's very simple to understand non-duality. Yeah, I can understand why it is a default, because to a certain degree it is true. But when you start digging deeper, in fact, it is not true. It is, well, just not true. And then you have the philosophers like Descartes and others of that nature, and they speak of non-duality, but they don't understand the concept very well either. And so they've got mixed ideas on what constitutes free will, and so they're kind of lost. So, and then you have the super deep spiritual Christian theologians that try to define free will, but they get off base because they don't understand the full ramifications of what that means. And so they say, well, God created man in such a way that God granted us humans free will. But see, they are of the opinion that God created us. But I've made this clear before, but this time I'm going to drill down and make it so damn crystal clear that there's no way for you to misunderstand this, okay? Free will cannot be given to something else. The most, if you want to call powerful, if you want to call God powerful, if you want to refer to the God of all gods, Brahma, or you want to recall it Krishna, or maybe Vishnu, or maybe Shiva, whatever your deity is that you assume to be the supreme being of all beings, some people default and say Brahma, which is the darkness of all things, can create an entity and give it free will. No, they cannot. God cannot create free will. Free will is an eternal attribute of an independent, I don't want to call it being because I don't know, I don't think there's a category that you can define as the independent core essence. I say essence, you've heard me say that many times, but I don't think there's a category that you can pigeonhole that says, oh, this is the category that essences fall into. This is the category that God falls into. This is the category of whatever it is that I'm attempting to define. There's no category for it. There's no way to say, oh, well, in this category, that's where essences are. So, that particular concept that I'm trying to define has free will as an ever-existing character trait, priori of the independentness of it. And this is why they compare, when I say they, not very many theys, but myself, compares yourself, your essence, to being identical to the core essence of God, the core essence of Brahma, Christ, Krishna, Vishnu, Shiva. No difference. All these entities, these beings, these gods that I'm defining have a quality about them which is free will. The ability, no, excuse me, let's back that up. So what is free will? Free will is the independentness from all outside influences, all gods, all creations, all things, independent from all realms, gods, beings, whatever. It is completely and utterly independent. And on its own, without any input from any outside source, it has inherent in itself free will. What is free will? As I said, the ability, golly, I keep saying ability. What is free will? The independentness to exercise choices, the exercising of choosing between one thing or another. You know how you've heard that God, the loving God that I'm referring to, the God that Jesus prayed to, you've heard it said that one of the character traits of this God, or better yet, the only character trait, if you were to narrow it down to a single word, it would be love. This particular God is love. If you could define this God, you would say, this God is love. But why is it love? See, now, if you dig deeper, why is Brahma love? If you dig deeper, you will find that this particular God, Brahma, exercises his, her, it, free will to choose love. Now you could say love is a eternal attribute of that God, but in reality that wouldn't be true. In reality, just like you, this God uses the eternal self-existing concept of free will to perfect love. We are doing the same, but how we're doing it is we are going through a very long, drawn-out creative period, exercising our free will to create ourselves. In Brahma, the outer darkness, the nothingness, the pregnant nothingness of everything, the nirvana of silence, Brahman, comes nothing. There is nothing in Brahman. I keep mixing those up, I'm sorry. There's nothing to choose from. When there's nothing, there's nothing to choose from. There's no light and dark. There's no hot and cold. There's no up and down. There's no vanilla ice cream or chocolate ice cream. There's no love. There's no hatred. There's nothing to choose from. And so, free will cannot mature. It still exists. The essence still has free will. But since there's nothing to choose from, it cannot do anything. It has the energy to do something. I keep saying it, but that's you. That's me. If I were to call myself an it, I'm not degrading it. I'm just saying I don't know what it is. God does not know what it is. And so it created this universe, all the realms that there possibly could be, the variety of things to choose from so that we could utilize our free will. And so when you ask someone, do you believe in free will? Do you think people have free will? They can't answer that question because they don't know what God has told me personally. And that is, from Brahman, your essence is independent and uncreated from any outside source. The fact that opportunities and choices were made available to you does not mean that you were made by another entity or God. The fact that you choose from your own free volition, that is an attribute of free will or your essence, then you create yourself. But you can't create yourself without choices. And Brahma, the God that Jesus prayed to, created all the objects from which you get to choose. Thus, creating a plethora of things for you to create yourself from. It's almost, if you visualize this cartoonish idea that I'm presenting. You don't exist, but you have an essence. And you choose to accept the light of God. So you enter into, because of that choice, you enter into a reality within Brahman, because God created it. You enter into this light. That's your first choice. And then, as time progresses, because time was created shortly thereafter, for you, by the way, time was created for you, you continue the process of making choices. And think of this cartoonish idea where you go, oh, now I have an arm. Now I can take pieces from here and here. I'll create myself another arm. Hey, I have two arms, but I can't see anything. So you take your hands and you take all of this substance and you create eyeballs and you go, oh, now I can see, but I don't have any legs. Well, I'll just pull this stuff together and create my legs. Wow, I can run around and I can see all kinds of stuff now. Now I want to see what else. And then you see that there's eventually, billions of years later, ugly things start to appear. Now you have the concept of duality, of choosing to be evil or good. And you keep adding these things to you because your eternal essence is exercising its free will to create itself. And you do this over a kalpa of time. And in fact, you do this eternally. Because in fact, Brahma is doing it right now, this very second. Is choosing to do things. Because reality is dynamic. It keeps changing. There never was, throughout all time and all history, another me, exactly like me. I am an original. You are an original. And we will continue to develop until Brahma decides this kalpa of time is over. And then at that time, if we have the power and strength within ourself to force our soul, our essence, to have the power to be like and with God, then we will eternally be alive with God. And if we don't, then we will revert to the nothingness of our core essence, back to Brahman, to repeat this cycle at some time, possibly quadrillions of years. But remember, time is only relevant to us because time doesn't exist. So forget about time in that regard, and now go into phases. Go back into how long does a kalpa of time last? 311 trillion years for the lifetime of Brahma. And then you start that process over again. Will you, if you don't make it to be one with God in this existence, will you choose to accept the light in the next opportunity? Maybe you will, maybe you won't. But the odd thing that is just as important, and I don't think I've gone deep enough into it in any of my videos in the past, but the concept of the atonement of Jesus. The atonement of Christ. You notice how I use those two names seemingly independent of each other. Every person, every God, has at least two names that define them in different realities or different realms. Jesus was never the Christ in his physical form. Christ, or let's put it this way, Jesus was the avatar of Christ. Remember that those are just names that are derived from Christianity. So don't get hung up on the names that I use, because they're not that important. It's only important that you recognize there are different names, because I could say the same thing in Hinduism and say that Krishna was not Vishnu. But Krishna was the avatar of Vishnu. Does that make sense? And then you hear a lot of times the word in Christianity, Satan. And you hear the word Lucifer. Same identical person. But Satan was the name of the physical being. And Lucifer was the same individual in a different realm. So don't get hung up on the names, because they change with every society, historically speaking. So the atonement that I was just talking about of Christ is an incredibly important thing, because it allows us the opportunity to change our trajectory. So we're in the process of making choices, exercising our free will to create ourselves. And then at some point we go, look what we created. I have now come awake to see, I have become aware. It's not like I become aware that I didn't make my hand well enough. That's not a sin. You don't repent of that. Repentance, the atonement, is something entirely different. The atonement is only valid when we create ourselves with sin, evil, and we can't get rid of it. And the atonement, because of our free will and our our ability to choose, we choose to accept the atonement of Christ into our existence to allow our trajectory to change and eliminate the sins that cannot be eliminated any other way. And by the way, this concept is similar in Hinduism, ancient Hinduism, which defines why in some depictions, I think it's Krishna has a blue body because he swallowed the sins of whatever it was. I'm not as familiar with Hinduism as I am Christianity, but it's the same story in a different dispensation. When I say dispensation, I mean that Christianity has occurred in the last 10, 12,000 years, whereas Hinduism, where the same avatar of Christ appeared as Krishna, was probably, I don't know, before the 10, 12,000 years. Was it 100,000 years ago? Was it only 25,000 years ago? I don't know. But it predates Christianity. And it did not happen in the last 10, 12,000 years. People who say that don't know what they're talking about. For instance, like the ancient Vedas, which I spoke about in my last video, they predate this. I mean, yeah, you can say they chanted and they wrote Sanskrit down and all that stuff, but the information itself came from a different dispensation from 20, 30, 40 million years ago, whatever, I don't know, but it predates Christianity and predates this 10, 12,000 year dispensation. Lastly, I wanted to get back to free will. Free will is not something that you can boil down and say it's choosing. Free will is way more than choosing. Because if you said it was choosing, then you could get it back into randomness or chaos or whatever and say, well, it's just randomness. You can create a computer, but you cannot give it free will. No inanimate object can have free will. How far does free will extend? Well, every independent being, uncreated by God, has free will. Lastly, I've said this before, but it ties in with free will, so I want to mention it. This world may, it's not like I have a revelation from God, but I'm able to put together the information that God has given me and make an educated guess based upon some pretty damn solid evidence, which I'm not going to go into at this point, that in fact there are human beings that do not have free will, that they are not like you and I, that they are created beings from Satan. And so they're like computers in a way. They may seem like they're you and I. They may seem like they have free will and that they choose independently. They may appear in every way, shape, and form, other than the fact that 100% of them you could categorize and say, well, they are sociopaths. Is it possible to be an independent being with an essence and be a sociopath? Yes. But all created beings from Satan, or who knows whatever gods, are sociopaths because they do not have the ability to love, the ability to make independent choices. They are essentially agents of Satan. And to what degree or what percentage are they of the population of this planet? I don't know. I said several years ago when I first came to this conclusion that probably close to 70% of the population of this world would fall into that category. But let's look at it a little differently. Those that do have free will, which are independent essences that have so-called sold their soul to the devil or are choosing actively in the light of choosing between God and Satan, they choose Satan. To what degree or what percentage do they occupy of the humans on this planet? Well, maybe they occupy 70% of the population of this planet. And of course, if they have an independent essence and they have so-called sold their soul to the devil, they still have free will. So they are able to be independent in what they choose, and they're dynamic, and therefore they could repent and ask for the atonement of Christ and change the trajectory, but they are, prior to that, they are evil. They're greedy. They're all of these things that would constitute someone that is so-called fallen according to Christianity. But then how many human beings are created by Satan or his top lieutenant demons? Maybe they can create, I don't know. But they don't have free will. And they look like humans. What's the percentage of them? In reality, what if, and I feel strongly about this, by the way, what if you and I are looking at each other through this camera, and because I have mentioned it numerous times, that I'm here to help you awaken and to understand what's going on in this horribly chaotic reality that is so incredibly deceptive in everything. I'm here to try to help you, to let you know that there is truth. It's damn difficult to find it, but that in fact there is truth on this plane of existence. So what if you and I, we love each other? What if you and I only represent 1 in a million? It is entirely possible that the ratio is that out of hand. The ratio is so far that maybe we're only 1 in a million. Maybe we're 1 in 1,000. I don't know. But what I do know is we represent a pretty damn slim margin, which is why they refer to the end times as the Kali Yuga. Anyways, you should meditate upon these concepts that I have introduced. The concept of free will. You should meditate on that. Seek guidance from God to help you understand it. It is not an easy concept. I know it sounds easy. I know it seems easy. I know it seems so like oh my gosh, why it can't be that complicated. I'm telling you, it is complicated because you can't understand the concept of free will unless you go and say, you can't create free will. A God cannot say, I am allowing you free will. Free will is not something granted. You can't take free will away. You can restrict choice, but that isn't taking free will away. It's just limiting the choices. It's like freedom, for instance. People don't understand the concept of freedom. They don't understand that every human being born is born with 100% freedom. God gave us freedom. And that all the laws and all the rules and all the governments and all the people and police and everything, all they do is restrict freedom. They don't grant it to you. A king cannot give you freedom. A king can only restrict your freedom. Does that make sense? Anyways, I'm going to end this video, and I love you. And I just made a video yesterday, so I don't know. I just felt inspired to make this today. Maybe one of you out there needed it. Anyways, I'll talk to you later.